Hey there, welcome back to our Sky Tonight program. This is Seth Mayo, Curator of Astronomy for the Loman Planetarium at MOAS, and in this edition we're covering the dates of December 19th through December 25th. We're going to start things off by celebrating the winter solstice, the beginning of winter for us here in the Northern Hemisphere. Then we're going to look at Mercury reaching its farthest eastern position from the Sun, and we're going to end with a look at a really great gathering of some planets and the Moon in the early evening around Christmas. So let's get to it. Now, at this time of year, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, of course, you're probably noticing it's getting darker much earlier, you're having less daylight and more night. And that, of course, is all due to the Earth's tilt. Earth is tilted away from the Sun in our part of the world. Of course, you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you're actually tilted more towards the Sun. And that tilt is most extreme for us coming up here on the 21st. That is what we call the December solstice, or for us in the Northern Hemisphere, the winter solstice. And as we've talked about before, the word solstice means to stand still, or the sun stands still. And that's because this time of year, as we're at that most tilted position away from the sun here, it seems as if the sun kind of sits still in its position before it moves back up into the sky. At this time of year, the sun charts its lowest angle across the sky, and that is why we're getting less energy and less light from the sun at this time of the year. And since it's lowest in the sky, that means it's farthest south below what's called the celestial equator, right? That equator that divides the sky into a northern and southern hemisphere. So of course, throughout the year, due to Earth's tilt, the sun seems like it's moving up and down along this line. And when it hits the line twice a year, those are the equinoxes, either in September for the fall equinox or in March for the spring or vernal equinox. But there are extremes on either side, and we're approaching that for our winter solstice. For us in the Northern Hemisphere, the beginning of winter. For those in the Southern Hemisphere, that is the beginning of summer and the longest day of the year. The sun charts a higher course across the sky in that part of the world. The precise time of the winter solstice is at 21:58 Greenwich Mean Time, or Universal Time. Local time here in the East Coast, that's about 4:48, so pretty far into the evening. The sun's pretty low by then, but at that moment the sun is technically lowest below the equator, and this is about the shortest day of the year with the longest night. And then not long after, the sun will kind of drift out of that stillness for the solstice and sort of move up north again towards that celestial equator once again. And that ebbing and flowing of the sun's movement there dictates our seasons. So it's always fun to celebrate them and to make note of them. And in particular, the winter solstice is important because it's actually tied to many of the holiday traditions that are celebrated now. It has links to the ancient Roman festival Saturnalia, which was a tribute to Saturn, the god of agriculture. Of course, the planet is named after that god. And there's other Jewish and even Christian ties to this time of the year. Of course, there may be connections between why Christmas is celebrated near the winter solstice. So interesting to see the kind of celebrations tied to this, but just in the natural world, to celebrate the sun getting really low in the sky, kind of a dark time of year, but also a transition time of year when eventually the sun will reach a higher position in the sky. So I'll end with saying happy winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere, or happy summer solstice in the Southern Hemisphere, as around the world we watch the sun seem to sit still in its north and south position. Now, something else I want to mention on the 25th, that evening, and it pertains to a planet that we don't always get a chance to see, but it's always fun to notice it, and that is the smallest planet in the solar system. So what I'm going to do is we're going to speed through time a little bit just after the sun sets here, around 5:30, at least local time in our neck of the woods. And as we do so, right above the southwestern part of the horizon, you might notice what looks like kind of a non-twinkling star right down there. There's actually even brighter one we'll talk about here in just a bit. But this right here is the planet Mercury. We can confirm that by clicking on it here in Stellarium. Mercury is the speedy little planet that is closest to our sun, doesn't stray too far from the sun because it's only about a third of the distance that we are from the sun in our solar system, and it feels more gravity. It only takes 88 days for Mercury to make one revolution around our sun, so it moves quite quickly, and no wonder it's named after the Roman messenger god who moved very quickly, known as Mercury, or to the Greeks, He was Hermes. And so when we do have these fleeting moments to see Mercury, it's always worth checking it out just above the setting sun. And on this evening, it's called greatest elongation east. That is when Mercury is most east of the sun, and generally one of the higher positions of Mercury in the sky. You do need to have a pretty clear and unobstructed view of your horizon. Of course, no bad weather or clouds. But if you have those conditions met, you might have a chance to see this tiny little planet that we'll fly to here that is now considered the smallest planet, at least regular planet in the solar system. And every time I show it to folks, either in the planetarium or also on Stellarium, it does sort of look like the moon. It is a pockmarked sort of crater-filled surface, gray and dusty, but it's very hot on the day side, a lot cooler on the night side. There's no atmosphere that envelops Mercury, or at least very little. So it has very extreme temperature differences because of its proximity to the sun. And if you could look at it carefully through a telescope, Mercury goes through phases like Venus does, and of course like our moon as well. And around this time, Mercury is considered just a bit of a gibbous phase, so a little over half full. So that's kind of neat to see if you have that opportunity. It is a little difficult with Mercury because of how close it is to the sun, how low it is in the horizon. So to see that is a little more challenging, but it's technically possible. So maybe you'll find Mercury, no matter what, kind of lingering there in the sky just after sunset. You don't have a lot of time to see it, but it's going to be one of your best opportunities right on the winter solstice, and even some days around that as well. So hopefully you get out there to check out Mercury farthest east from the sun. Now, just a few days later, after the winter solstice, after we see Mercury at its farthest eastern elongation from the sun, we have some other objects joining the scene right after sunset. I would say around the maybe 5:45, 6 o'clock local time in the southwestern part of the sky. This is where you have a chance to see not only Mercury, which you can find there, but joining the scene is the brightest planet in our sky, the planet Venus. You might have even seen it before this, but it's going to get even better as we get through the rest of the year. So this is on Christmas Eve. It's kind of neat to have that. And as you notice, a very thin waxing crescent moon nearby as well. So you have a beautiful, really sliver of the moon, Mercury there, and Venus. And all of these objects are the only objects we can see from Earth that go through phases. Isn't that neat to see all three of those types of objects all huddled together very low in the sky? So again, Venus is brightest. Mercury won't be as bright, but it should be noticeable if it's clear enough. And the moon, and just keep in mind there are other planets in the sky as well. We have Saturn a little higher up, then Jupiter, and on the other side of the sky, rising out of the east, the planet Mars. So there's a lot of planets to see right now. Now, this is on Christmas Eve. Let's say we go to actually Christmas evening here, and there you'll see Venus rises a tiny bit higher. Mercury is still pretty much in the same location, and you'll see an even larger waxing crescent moon there, rising a little bit higher in the sky, getting a little closer to Saturn. So that's nice. And just keep in mind, for those who are looking forward to seeing Venus, Venus is actually rising higher and higher, and in the early part of 2023, we'll have a much better view of the brightest planet we can see in our sky. So that will be quite nice. But at least around this time, Christmas Eve, Christmas, and even just after, you'll see all these kind of objects sort of huddled together, solar system objects, Venus, Mercury, the moon, Saturn, and of course you have those other planets strewn across the sky as well. Hey, that's it for another edition of our Sky Tonight program. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you're in the area, please stop by the Museum of Arts and Sciences. And even around the holidays, we are mostly open except for Christmas and New Year's Day. So if you're around town and you want to check us out, it's a great holiday destination. And check out a show in our Loman Planetarium. If you want any more information about our schedule and what we're doing around the museum, please check out our website and tune into our various social media channels where we're always posting some great content from around the museum and from around the universe. So with that, I'm going to say happy holidays and of course, happy stargazing.